Story is about a boy named Arthur. Arthur loved to play soccer. Every day after school, he came home with his friends to play soccer. Now, Arthur lived in a poor neighborhood. They had no net for the goal. They threw their jackets against the wall of the house to make the goalposts. And he invited his friends to come and play soccer. So one day after school, Arthur is playing soccer with his friends, and his mother came to the door of the house and said, "Arthur, it's time for dinner. Please bring your friends inside and we'll have dinner together." So they went inside and they had dinner. After dinner, Arthur said with his usual passion, "I want to play soccer again. Come on, boys, let's go play soccer again." Now, Arthur was maybe not like all boys because he loved to play in the goal. He was a goalie. And most of the time, the boys would want to change off. Someone would stay in the goal and the others would play in the field. But he was the goalie, and he was a very good goalie, one of the best. So when he said, "Let's go play soccer again," the other boys said, "No, Arthur, it's dark. It's dark out now. We can't see." And Arthur said, "It doesn't matter." Because you see, Arthur was blind. Arthur learned to play soccer and to be the best goalie by listening. He developed a sense that we all have, which we do not use fully. And in developing that, he learned some things that other people don't learn. He had an acute sense of hearing that allowed him to hear the ball coming through the air. He also listened for the sound of the foot against the ball, and he knew which one of his friends was kicking. And by that sound, he knew which direction the ball would go because he knew the habits of his friends and how their strategy was to play soccer. And so became a very good goalie. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to be like Arthur in sales and marketing. We need to develop that keen sense for the customer, for the marketing opportunities, for the pain points, so that we know just almost intuitively where the ball is going, how to save the day, how to make the score, and how to win the game. But we miss out a lot of times in those opportunities because we don't develop the senses that we have. They're gifts to us already, but we don't necessarily know how to use them. So just like Arthur has developed that keen sense of hearing, that acute sense of being able to even hear the displacement of air when something passes through, we can develop the same kind of sense for marketing and sales. How would you like to be an award-winning salesperson or account manager? What does that mean? Let me take you back in time. I want to take you back to the 1800s, when the first concept of sales management was started, and people were starting to gravitate towards what we call thought leaders today. But they were people who were developing systems and processes for sales. And those people became respected in their communities because it became a way of doing sales, of a process of moving forward to help solve the problems of the customer and create win-win relationships. One of those early people, a little later than the 1800s, in the 1900s, there was a man named Smoke Ballou. Now, sometimes I think some of the Dutch names are a little strange. And maybe you think some of the English names are strange, but maybe you'll think that Smoke Ballou is a great name. I think it's a great name. Smoke Ballou worked for a company in Waco, Texas called Dr. Pepper. Anyone who's traveled to the U.S. has probably tasted Dr. Pepper, which is a cola with a bit of a cherry flavor. And Smoke Ballou got together a number of sales managers from around the Fort Worth, Dallas, and Waco area and had a meeting. And for the meeting, they invited a man named Ingersoll to come from New York and be their speaker. And when he was there speaking for them, this was in 1932. Just like our modern sales conferences today, the best part of the meeting happens in the bar after the event. And as they sat around drinking whiskey and talking about sharing their great sales stories, and maybe exaggerating a little bit, they got talking about the fact that there's probably more clubs like this, just like ours, around the United States, where they're having similar issues about sales management and the selling process and refining it and developing. What if there are more of these? And Mr. Ingersoll from New York said, well, I know the man who would know the answer to this question. His name is Raymond Bill. And Raymond Bill was the founder and publisher of Sales Management Magazine in New York. He said, why don't you write a letter? And I will take it on the train and go back to New York and give the letter to Raymond Bill. So they wrote a letter and said, would you please help us spread the word? We'd like to gather the heads of all of these sales management clubs from around the United States into a central meeting and share ideas and perhaps develop an association of like-minded people around the United States. And so Mr. Ingersoll took this letter that was written by Smoke Ballou and took it back to New York. He met with Raymond Bill, and Raymond Bill published the open letter inviting everyone from these sales clubs in his magazine to come to New York for a meeting. And that meeting was held on October 17th, 1935, 81 years ago, at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City in the Empire Room. The difference between that meeting and the one we're having today is striking. Not in the fact that there are not people sitting around a long table like this, which was, you can see the photo on our website, but by the fact that there were no women in the room. In fact, one of the sales clubs that joined this organization was from Philadelphia, and they were started over 100 years ago. We just discovered the bylaws for that association the other day, and they still don't allow women, according to the bylaws, but most people don't read those documents anymore, and so they had to let women in. So we have made some progress, a little, because there are not enough women in the room today. We'd like to see more. Women make a very valuable contribution. So what else is different today than in 1935? Not much. Not much. We still struggle with this concept of creating sales and marketing as a reputable profession. When my son was young, he's 22 now, but when he was a young boy, they had a professional day at school when parents who were professionals could come to the school and speak to the children and talk to them about what they do in their profession. The children were very young, maybe third or fourth grade, so it gives them some seeds to plant in their mind about things that they could do when they finished their schooling. And so my son came to me and said, would you come to professional day? I was honored, because typically the people who come are doctors and lawyers, accountants and nurses and firemen, but no salespeople. So I went. And I took with me some membership certificates from SMEI. And as each little group of students rotated around the gymnasium and they came to my station, I asked each of their names. And as they gave me their names, I took a big black pen like you had to make your name today, and I wrote their name on the membership certificate. And at the end of the session, I gave each of them a certificate saying that they were a member for the day. They were a salesman. And they proudly carried these little papers, and soon all of the children in the school were running to my booth, to my stand, because they wanted to be a salesman. And I thought, what a great thing that we could plant this seed in the minds of young people, maybe somewhat corrupting their little minds, but give them this view that sales is a profession and you could graduate and become a salesman. You could graduate and do something besides driving a cab in New York. As you know, if you've been to New York and you talk to the cab drivers, many of them are very well educated. They could have gone into sales, but they didn't. They went to drive a cab instead. How do we make sales and marketing a profession? How do you become an award-winning salesperson? So over the years, we've been faced with this dilemma. How do we create this profession that people will gravitate to and they will be proud at cocktail parties of saying, I'm a salesman? You know, the only cocktail party that I went to, what I was a little reluctant to tell what I did for a living, was when I worked for a funeral home. Oh, that's a party killer. Somebody come up, hi, what do you do? I'm a mortician. I'm an undertaker. Well, so everything isn't as bad as selling. You could actually be something worse. But we don't want to look at it that way in degrees of better or worse. We want to look at it as a true profession that you can be proud of. And you can say, I am proud of what I do because I actually solve people's problems. You know, you've heard this saying that we should ask the buyer, what keeps you awake at night? You know, I don't really like that saying. I don't like that question. It's trite. Too many people use it now. But I'm going to ask you a question. Every working day of your life, not Saturday or Sunday if you are sales, you usually don't work on the weekend, but maybe you do sometimes. But every working day of your life, what's the most worrisome thing you think of when you wake up? Just think about that for a minute. And you are a human being, and just think that every single person you call on when you're selling has the same kinds of thoughts in the morning. Not the same worry as you do, but people worry. People think about what if. In my family, I've designated my wife as a worrier. I don't worry because I like to delegate things like that. We don't all need to be worriers. But in my heart of hearts, I do worry about things. I worry about what's going to happen in the economy. What about the political unrest that we see happening around the world? How is that going to impact my customers? How is that going to impact our members around the world and make it easier or harder for them to do their jobs? In this global economy that we live in, how do we embrace multiculturalism and respect our neighbors even if they don't look, talk, sound, dress like us? And how do we sell in that kind of environment with respect? How do we prepare people for careers in sales and marketing when they come from college? Do we do a good job? And how do we help people advance their careers? So you see, SMEI has two tracks. We work on helping students develop their career readiness. And we also work on helping professionals like you advance their careers. Whether you're an entrepreneur with your own business, solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, or whether you work for a small company, a middle-sized company, or a large multinational, you still need to advance. You still need to learn. You need to, what we call, sharpen the saw every day so that you can be the best that you can be. You know that when in Canada we have a lot of lumber business. And you know, in the old days, the lumberjack used to go into the forest with an axe and a saw. And his first job was to chop a wedge in the tree so that when he started to saw, the tree would fall where he wants it to fall. The first thing he did every morning, or sometimes the night before, was to sharpen his axe. Why? Because it would take less blows, less energy, less time to get the job done. In sales, if we don't do that on a regular basis, if we just let ourselves go with the knowledge that we have today and we don't learn something new, we're going to have a dull axe. is going to take us longer. In some cases, we will end up using blunt force to try and close the sale instead of to help a customer solve a problem. So our job as an association worldwide now, since those early days in the 1800s when this idea started to formulate of creating this association around the world, we have now grown to have certified members in over 22 countries. We have over 60,000 people as members. And today, you are actually a live studio audience for over 50,000 people on Facebook, a little over 60,000 actually. And I'd like to give a shout out to some of our members in Europe because we're in the right time zone right now. But many of our members are going to watch this later. But our members in Europe, in the Middle East, in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, hello to you. Thanks for joining. Because we are a global community. And our job is not just to educate, it's to help share knowledge. You know, you can belong to a trade association where you trade business cards and you call someone the next day and say, who can you refer me to? We're going to talk a little bit about that a little later about referral selling. But our main job is to share knowledge. So last night at dinner, we had an opportunity to help one of our members, Fernando, talk about a little challenge in sales management. So as a growing into a position with new people and a new opportunity, sometimes you face challenges that you haven't faced before. But you can count on the fact that inside the SMEI membership around the world, someone has the answer to help you solve that. They face the same thing exactly as you do. And so we have a number of forums where you can do that, just like tonight, where you can network with people, you can get together and go for dinner, or you can join us in a new online program called Social Link, which is part of our website that comes with a membership, where you can join with all of these thousands of members around the world, share your ideas, and it's not that there's anything wrong with other social media sites, like LinkedIn, they have a great purpose, or Facebook. But this one is exclusively for SMEI members and sales and marketing content. So you can be assured that you're not going to get hit on to sell you something, but in this safe garden with the wall around it, we're going to be talking about the challenges that you have as a sales and marketing professional. So I hope that when we go back to that original question, would you like to be an award-winning salesperson? What does that actually mean? Who decides if you're an award-winning salesperson? I don't think it's your customer. I mean, I don't think it's your company. I don't think it's necessarily your colleagues that you work with. I think it's your customer. The person whose problems you solve decides. And when I was in a sales position, in a sales management position, I used to say something that drove my superiors crazy. And that was, I want you to have a customer for life. Because I know you're probably not going to work for me or for this company for forever. The days of working your whole life for the same company and getting a gold watch upon retirement is probably long gone. But we can keep customers for life. And how do we do that? How would you like it if you move on to a transition to another career, another business, and your customer still respected you enough that they would look for you? Because you helped them solve problems. You were not there just to make money. You were looking at them as a real person with real problems, with real worries just like you have. And you want to get through the day. You want to provide for your family. Maybe you want to educate them as they grow up and help them to get established in life. And you just want to help people. So that is just a little description about the vision and the mission of SMEI. Help people become career ready and help them advance their careers. Help them solve problems for customers. Help them to become like Arthur, sensitive to what's around them and able to tune into that universe where you can draw on the resources of a worldwide network to help you become an award-winning salesperson. Thank you.
Willis, I have a couple of questions for you. But first, do you guys have any questions for Willis at this moment? Nothing? Was he so clear? with me, you mostly have some questions, but that's probably because I don't clarify things as good as Willis do. Thank you, Willis. You know, then I know where I stand again. But you have taken sales as an example of what SMEI can do for sales, but actually sales and marketing executives international. There's one marketeer here, that lady with the red, kind of reddish hair. And there's somebody else who's interested here in marketing, I understand? No? This lady? Well, the ladies. Well, but what is it SMEI more a sales association, or is it a sales and marketing association? How would you describe it?
Ben, it's a good question, and I really think it's a sales and marketing association. In the beginning, it was known as the National Sales Managers Federation, so it was founded as a sales management association. And some of you may know, heard of an organization in the United States called the American Marketing Association. And when SMEI was a federation, the American Marketing Association was actually one of our affiliates. So they were inside the organization. In 1940, our member dues went from 50 cents to $1 per person. And American Marketing Association said that's too much of an increase, and they took all their members and left. And so they disaffiliated from SMEI. We still laugh about that today because they're a great organization, but they focus strictly on marketing. One of the challenges that we have in this world is that there are too many silos. And when you have an organization that has silos built around sales and a silo built for marketing, there's no integration and there's no talk back and forth. And so we really need to have tight integration between sales and marketing to have an efficient organization to be able to serve the customer in a very productive and professional way. So I believe it's important that we have sales and marketing.
Okay. Do you agree that if you look at the essence of sales and marketing, that at the core there's not much difference? It's the same principles. I always like to say, sales is more one-on-one. I look somebody into the eye, and marketing is one-to-many. Do you agree on that, or do you have a different view on that?
Well, marketing today can be more than one-to-many. Through sophisticated tools, we can drill down and have mass marketing created, but customized for individuals. But when you think about marketing, the actual essence and the definition of marketing is an exchange. So there has to be a fair exchange of equal value from one company to another or from one person to another. There has to be an exchange. And that exchange is actually decided, the value of it is decided by the marketplace. But sales is a component of marketing, and most salespeople don't like you to say that, but it is true. Marketing is the big picture. Sales is an activity that takes place within marketing to transfer the message from the company to the buyer and to take the buyer's message back to the company. So salespeople really are boundary spanners. And a boundary spanner is someone, when they're going to the customer, representing the company, but when they're coming back to the company, they're representing the customer. So it is a very challenging situation to be in because you have to be fair to both sides. But a true professional salesperson is a boundary spanner that knows how to do it very effectively and fairly represents both sides.
Okay, thank you. Any questions so far for Willis? He will participate the rest of the afternoon and
a couple over here.
Evening. Jacco.
How do you recognize within the 22 countries difference in culture between the salesperson's sales activities in America and in Asia, for example, or in Europe? Is there a difference in culture, and how do salespeople react on it on the online platform you mentioned?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. When it comes to the actual foundations of sales and marketing, we believe in a global standard. So I wouldn't change the standard for any country. But we realize that in some countries there needs to be some customization to recognize the local culture. We do a lot of work in, for example, I'll use China as an example because the culture is very different in the East from the West. So you will find that there are cultural differences, but when you drill down to the very basics, there's a term in China called guanji. Guanji means relationship. And in China, nothing happens without guanji. So that's really true here too. You build a relationship, buyers buy from people they know and trust, and so really that is a fundamental, even though the culture is different, the basic underlying fundamental is exactly the same. But you might go about it in a little different way. For example, in China, you will have a lot of relationship building, becoming part of the family or part of the friends. For example, the first time I meet someone in China, I become a friend. The second time I go back to meet them, I'm an old friend. You don't do business until you're an old friend. So your discussions are more social in nature. You spend a lot of time talking about family. You share photos. You have a few of these, and you become part of the family. You become trusted, and then you can start to do business. But it's very poor form to start talking business in China until you've got that guanji, that reputation of being somebody that can relate. And in China, usually, if you want to meet with a company, you find somebody who has guanji with that company. What do we call that? Referral selling. So it's really the same, just slightly different. So, but in terms of the standards, it's worldwide. We believe in a worldwide standard. You had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, when you look at sales in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, I mean, sales is like cutting out the middleman. Who needs a salesman? Sales was a job. I came to you as a customer. I would supply you with some knowledge. The knowledge is now on the internet. So when you look at the development on the bottom side, it's taken off by the internet, and on the top end side, it's taken off by consultants. I need a consultant who helps me do my business. So my question is, isn't sales just a competence of a consultant? Becoming one of the competences a consultant or an advisor needs. So in what respect are you working together with consultancy firms or consultancy associations?
Yes, very good question. And I believe that true professional selling is consultative selling. So if a company has a complex problem that needs to be solved, they need somebody who can help them drill down, actually define what the problem is. Sometimes they don't know exactly what it is. And that role can be played by a salesperson, but I would call them a consultant and consultative selling. And that, I believe, is the future. 15 years ago, I was interviewed for an article called The Death of the Salesman. And at that time, people were predicting that, with the advent of CRM and Salesforce automation, that we weren't going to need to have salespeople. And you can see a lot of things happening now with artificial intelligence and bots and things that are happening that you would think that would eliminate human intervention, but we need human intervention even more. Because if you look at the early days of CRM was seen as a panacea, something that would solve the problems of the companies and help them manage the customer relationship. And what happened is that they found out it was garbage in, garbage out. We call it GIGO. Whatever you put into the system, and it's the same today whether you use Salesforce.com or any other automation software, if you're not putting intelligent information in and you don't know how to extrapolate that information and read the data and interpret it, it's actually the same thing. It's garbage. So big data, which is something that marketers are really fond of, is really a waste of time unless you know how to use that data, extrapolate it, and turn it into something that's meaningful for the customer. Yesterday we were talking a little bit about the concept of Alexa, the device that's used by Amazon to help you manage your life, automate your home, turn on your music when you want it, just voice commands. And what's happening is that it's found now that Alexa is actually listening to your conversations in your home and then serving up ads based on keywords that you've actually spoken. It's a little bit scary when you think about it. But think of it on the other side. Think of the things that artificial intelligence can do to help us do our jobs better, more efficiently, where we can learn things and teach robots and use artificial intelligence to help solve our customers' problems a little better. So we're taking data and making it meaningful beyond the dashboard, but drilling down inside and seeing how to use that information. But in order for salespeople to manage in that kind of a world, we have to stay sharp. we have to learn about these things. We have to learn how to use them. We have to adopt these tools and learn how to use them. So I would encourage everyone who is in sales or marketing to be attending conferences on virtual reality and augmented reality. Go to some conferences where they're talking about artificial intelligence. Get out of your box. Don't just go to sales events. Don't just go to marketing conferences. Go to some other places and find out what they're doing. I had a marvelous experience in Nordvac earlier this week. I went to the NH Hotel, and inside the NH Hotel, they have a permanent installation with a holographic platform. And I attended and presented on stage for the first time in my life as a holographic image, interacting with real people in the audience. And that is an amazing, amazing technology. And it's getting less and less expensive. So in the past, where you might have spent €100,000 or more to use this technology, now you can go to NH Hotel for about €20,000, put on a conference using a hologram. And you could be, here presenting inside of a box with curtains on 3 walls and a microphone and presenting to any place that has this holographic equipment. That makes it really, really interesting. Not only that, but you could be demonstrating something on stage. You could be standing on stage and interacting with holographic images to display your product in 3 dimensions, turning it and showing people how it works. And all of that is being just published as a 3D image on the stage. It makes it very interactive and very exciting for the audience. So how are you going to do that without getting informed about how it works and getting involved in that? Sometimes I go, especially this happens a lot in China, where we might be doing a training for Bank of China or PetroChina, and they want case studies on their industry. They want a case study on the petrochemical industry, or they want a case study on finance and banking. And we actually don't do that. And the reason why is we want to present them with a case study that they can use as an analogy, where they can look at how another industry is solving the problems of sales and marketing and apply it to their industry. Because the worst thing we can do as an industry is to be inbred, is to just focus strictly inside of our industry and look what's the competition doing and try to copy them. But look outside of that. Look at Amazon as an example. Amazon didn't look at traditional bookstores when they started their business model. They said, how can we do it different? How can we do it with ones and zeros, with data? And then how can we take it even further and look on the periphery of our business and see other opportunities? They're out on the edge of their business. They're looking at opportunities where they can actually use drones for delivery, where they can sell their unused space on their servers for other companies to store their data and manage their businesses. So they're doing some profitable growth by looking outside. If they strictly looked at a bookstore that sells books online and ships them to your door, they might have limitations in their growth, but they're looking at other ways that they can move beyond that. And so when you look at the experience of the customer, how can you take that to the next level? Where's the edge for you? And how can you find a way to become a higher level consultant? I'll give you one more example of this particular thing when you talked about the consultancy, is the Toro Company. The Toro Company is a multi-billion-dollar company based in Minnesota, and they manufacture irrigation equipment and grounds maintenance for golf courses. So you might be seen as a consumer, you might have seen the little machines to mow your grass in your yard, but they actually have a multi-billion-dollar business that's outside of that. And what do you need in order to have green grass in your golf course? What do you need? Water. What is there a shortage of? Water. And the conservation efforts to reduce the amount of water put pressure on the golf courses to look at things in a different way. And so what happens when you develop a grass that is resistant to drought, does not need as much water, it's not going to grow as fast, and it doesn't need to be maintained as much with the equipment, which means a downturn in the business for Toro. So what did Toro do? Instead of just folding their hands and saying, whoa, this is so sad for us, we're going to be cutting sales, we're going to be reducing our manufacturing. Instead, they took their sales force to a new level and trained them how to be consultants, to go out and solve the problems of the golf course, which is not just keeping the grass green, but how do we keep it green without using as much water. And therefore, they created a whole system of service selling, not selling products, but selling a service, a consultancy, helping them to develop hybrid grasses that didn't need as much water, and helping them to use equipment effectively. So it became, instead of selling hardware and equipment, is selling a service, and thereby changed the whole notion of what it means to be a Toro salesperson. So think about your own situation. Are you selling and pushing product, or are you a consultant? Are you at that level where you feel comfortable being a consultant that can solve complex problems? One other quick example. You may have heard of the merger between Marriott and Starwood Hotels, and now Marriott is the largest hotel company in the world. But even before this merger, they're the largest purchaser of furniture in the world, because every Marriott hotel, in order to maintain a standard, must replenish their furniture every 4 to 5 years. They totally refurbish the hotel. New beds, new desks, new nightstands, new cabinets, new chairs. Everything has to be changed. And so the Marriott salespeople are going out to sell contracts to corporations for room nights for their traveling salespeople and executives. And one company that they met with, they, of course, want to put downward pressure on the pricing. Let's get the best possible price for the room nights so that we can save money on travel expenses. The salesperson from Marriott asked a really interesting question. What is your biggest project this year? What's your company doing? And he found out that the company was actually building a new campus headquarters. And so we thought, what could we do as Marriott to help them? Because this is a big thing, building a new campus. And when a company builds a new campus and a new office building, do they take the old furniture from the old one over there? No. Everything is new. Everything is new. So the Marriott salesperson said, what if I could help you reduce the cost of your furniture acquisition for your campus? Well, that's a really interesting idea. So he went back to his boss and he said, could we help my customer use the same purchasing power as Marriott to buy furniture? And so they were able to use the same purchasing power and get the Marriott prices for the furniture for the new campus. Guess what the price level was for the room nights? High. So you don't need to lower price. You need to add value. That is the true consultant. They solved a very high pain point for the customer and reduced their cost on something of a capital acquisition that really is something that's not going to make you any money in the future. There's no ROI in buying furniture. But they saved the money on that so that they could go back to them and say, here's our package. But they were able to keep a premium price on the room nights. So how do you do that? How do you keep your price where it's profitable in a growth mode? Is by adding value, not lowering the price. Because as soon as you get into the price war, you become a commodity. And in a commodity world, you only rely on supply chain logistics and volume, and that's not a game where you can win. It's probably a long way to answer your question.